What's up, guys? Acosta here. In today's lecture, we're going to talk about how cerebrospinal fluid and the meninges help to support and protect the brain. So what I have drawn here on the board, this is a sagittal view of the brain, and then this is part here in purple, this is what represents the skull. So cerebrospinal fluid is found here within the subarachnoid space, so that's this part that's here in green. And so what it functions to do is to provide some buoyancy. It's providing some buoyancy into the brain, so it's floating here within the cranial cavity. So another component of it, besides the buoyancy, is that it provides some protection during movement. So for instance, because it's floating here within the brain, if you hit your head, the brain is just going to somewhat shift. There's some give to it because we have this space here with the fluid that's found here in the subarachnoid space. So let's write some of that information here on the board. So CSF function, it provides buoyancy to the brain. So it provides buoyancy, and this helps to reduce the weight of the brain. So if there wasn't this cerebrospinal fluid that's found here in that subarachnoid space, then the medulla would just fall through that foramen magnum. Okay, so you have the buoyancy, which reduces the weight. Another function of it that we discussed, we talked about how it protects during movement. So movement, we have some protection here. Another aspect is that it provides a stable environment. So stable environment, meaning that the nutrients, so for instance, like the ions, we want to keep a stable environment. And we also want to remove any type of toxins here. So remove toxins. Okay, so the places in which CSF is found. So I've already talked about the subarachnoid space, and it's also found within the ventricles of the brain. So we'll talk more about that here in a bit. Okay, so how is CSF produced? Well, CSF, what you have this structure here in red, what this is representing is what's known as the choroid plexus. So the choroid plexus is this capillary network in which blood plasma is circulating through. And the blood plasma, what it does is it travels through, and it has to pass through these cells here. So these cells here in purple, these are glial cells. And these glial cells, they are, let me write that here in purple, the glial cells. So these glial cells are known as the ependymal cells. So as blood plasma travels through here, it flows through these ependymal cells, and then it gets into the ventricles. From there, it's then going to travel from the lateral to the third to the fourth, and then from there it eventually gets to the subarachnoid space. So we'll write out the exact flow of that here in a bit. So the next thing let's talk about is the composition of CSF. So I've already said that CSF is it comes from the blood plasma, but we alter some of the components within CSF. So in relation to the blood plasma, CSF has a greater concentration of sodium and the chloride ion. It has less calcium ions here, as well as calcium and potassium. Some things that are not found in CSF include, so you have plasma proteins, you have red blood cells, white blood cells, as well as platelets. So all these components that are normally found within the blood plasma are not found circulating within CSF. Okay, so now let's move on to the flow of cerebrospinal fluid. So For the flow of cerebrospinal fluid, it first starts off in the lateral ventricles. And from the lateral ventricles, it then travels to the third ventricle. From the third, it goes to the fourth ventricle. And once you get to the fourth ventricle, you travel through what's known as these apertures. So you have a median, and then you also have a lateral aperture. So once you get past these different apertures, you then travel through these cisterns. So cisterns are these openings here. So cisterns. So you have, for the median, the first one is the cerebellomedullaris cistern. And I'm going to point these apertures out here in a second. So you have the cerebellomedullaris cistern, and then for the lateral one, you have the cerebellomedullaris, and then the cerebellopontine cistern. And what this leads to is where we've been trying to get to, that we've already discussed, the subarachnoid space. Okay. So in order to get from the lateral ventricles to the third ventricle, you travel through the interventricular, interventricular foramen. From the third ventricle to the fourth, you travel through the cerebral aqueduct. So the cerebral aqueduct. And one other thing I wanted to point out here for the flow of cerebrospinal fluid, you also have the ependymal cells. So the ependymal cells also line the ventricles. And these ependymal cells, they have the cilia, and this cilia helps to propel, to keep that CSF moving forward. So what I have here, I have this brain model, and I wanted to show you what I was talking about as far as the apertures. So if I take this off, so what you're looking at here, this part is the brainstem, and then this here is where the thalamus is. So if you remove this part, and then you see it from here, what you'll find is that this here is the lateral aperture, and then the median aperture is here on the back side. So it's traveling here from the fourth ventricle through the lateral aperture, and then it's going around. So it's going around the pons. So you can see it wrapping around this way, the lateral aperture. That's why we call it the cerebello, because the cerebellum sits here on the back side. So let me put that. So it sits like this. So the cerebellopontine, right? So it's coming out this way. So coming up here to the brain, circulating through the subarachnoid space, and then also cerebellomedullaris. So this is referring to the cerebellum, and then we're talking about the medulla, because the medulla is this part here of the brainstem, which is coming around, flowing backwards, flowing back in this direction past the cerebellum until it travels all the way up into the subarachnoid space, and then it gets into the superior sagittal sinus. Okay, so now that we've covered here cerebrospinal fluid and the flow of it into the subarachnoid space, let's continue this. So the next thing we need to bring up is the different meninges. So one of the layers of the meninges is known as the arachnoid mater. So the arachnoid mater, this is the layer 2 right here. And this particular layer here, this is where the subarachnoid space is found. So you have the subarachnoid space. This is where it's found, right here, between this layer, which is the pia mater. So you also have these little reticular fibers here So you have these reticular fibers as well as the collagen, and this is what's known as the trabeculae. So you have the trabeculae. So the trabeculae here are anchoring the arachnoid matter to the pia mater here. So cerebrospinal fluid is circulating up here within the subarachnoid space, and then it travels into this structure right here. So this is what's known as the arachnoid granulations. So the arachnoid granulations, that's what empties into this blue triangle here. So this blue triangle is known as the superior sagittal sinus. So once you get to the superior sagittal sinus, so that's also found here, this posterior view of the brain. So it travels back down this way. So once it travels down from here, it then goes into the transverse direction. So let me show you that here on the model. So this here is the superior sagittal sinus coming down this way, and then it's merging here at this point. So let's go ahead and write out the drainage of the cerebrospinal fluid into the venous system. So we've already said that it gets to the, so let's see, we'll write this here. So superior sagittal sinus, and then from there it then gets into what's known as the straight sinus, and from the straight sinus it then goes into the transverse sinus. From the transverse sinus, it then gets into the sigmoid sinus, and then from there we finally get to the internal jugular vein. Okay, so now that we've covered the complete flow of cerebrospinal fluid, let's now finish the meninges. So once again, what you're looking at here, this is an anterior view, the coronal plane of the brain, and then this part here that you're looking at, that's what's blown up right here. So number one, I've already mentioned what this particular layer is. It's found between the gyri and the sulci of the brain. It's in direct contact. It's what's known as the pia mater. So the pia mater is composed of areolar connective tissue. So you have the pia mater, and then the next layer we've already discussed was the arachnoid mater with the trabeculae anchoring it there. And then the next layer is the dura mater. This is known as the tough mother. So dura means tough, so you have the tough mother, and then this is the soft mother, and then arachnoid means spider-like. So there are two layers for the dura mater. The first one here that is drawn up this way, so this is the meningeal layer. So you have the meningeal layer of the dura mater, and then you also have the periosteal layer. So periosteal. So the periosteal layer, that's here at the very top. So see this, so this here represents the dura mater, and then see how it bifurcates to form the top part, which is the periosteal. So that part here in purple, that's what's representing the skull. So it's, and this is in direct contact here, that meninges, and then this is what's representing the meningeal layer, which is coming down this way. Okay, and the dura mater, what it's composed of is dense, irregular connective tissue. Dense, irregular connective tissue. So the meningeal layer of the dura mater is very important because this is what helps to form the dural folds. So the dural folds, and it's also known as the dural cranial septa. So you have the dural cranial septa. So there are three particular dural folds that you should be familiar with. And let's go ahead and write some of them out here. So the first one is the falx cerebri, which is found between, it's within the longitudinal fissure, and it's anchored to this part over here. So here within the ethmoid bone, this is what's known as the crista galli. So the falx cerebri, it's found between the right and the left hemispheres of the brain here. So it's found in between, and it's that protective sheath. So once again, like I said, it's anchoring to the crista galli. So you have this one here within the longitudinal fissure, the falx cerebri. You also have the falx cerebelli, So that's what's down here, number 2, in between the right and the left halves for the cerebellum. So falx cerebelli. And then the last one, number 3, this is the tentorium. So it's forming a tentorium cerebelli. Okay, so once again, what these sheaths, what these different protective layers, they're protecting the brain, and they're helping to keep also these dural venous sinuses in place. So the superior sagittal sinus, this is an example of a dural venous sinus. So a sinus is very similar to a vein. One of the exceptions is that the sinuses, they lack valves to prevent backflow, because we want the cerebrospinal fluid to continuously circulate. One other thing to also note is that you also have the drainage of the blood from the brain, the venous blood, which also gets into the superior sagittal sinus. And then you also have the inferior sagittal sinus. So you have the inferior sagittal sinus. And both of these guys, they merge. So inferior and sagittal sinus, they help to form the straight sinus. And once you get to the terminal end of the straight sinus, you have the occipital. So the occipital sinus, which goes to the straight. Well, at this point, at the mergence of all 3 of these guys, this is where, so let me point that out over here. So if you can see this structure right here, this is what's known as the confluence of sinuses. So the confluence of sinuses, because they're all converging at this point. Confluence of sinuses. So then from there, you have the drainage of the blood back. So drainage of the cerebrospinal fluid, as well as the venous blood from the brain getting back into it gets into the internal jugular vein, and then it gets into the heart. Okay, so that's going to do it for this lecture.